In a small town, a funeral is interrupted by a dog that won't stop barking. The animal belonging to the deceased refuses to leave the coffin, barking endlessly, as if trying to communicate something. At first, family and friends think it's just a show of loyalty, but as the ceremony progresses, the barking becomes more insistent and unsettling, catching everyone's attention, with no one able to calm him down. When they try to take him away, the dog insists on returning, as if he's trying to indicate something hidden. Intrigued, those present begin to wonder what might be behind the animal's unusual reaction. Responding to the dog's desperate appeal, they uncover a shocking secret that sheds new light on a hidden truth about the deceased and what he went through in life. Want YouTube to notify you when I post a new video? Hit the red button so you'll know when a new video drops, and you won't miss another amazing story like this. Now let's continue with the story. The funeral was unfolding in an atmosphere of sadness and respect until the dog's persistent barking completely changed the tone of the ceremony. People looked on, uncomfortable, but no one dared to push the animal away. He seemed to have something urgent to say. Those around him murmured, some distressed, others annoyed, but the dog wouldn't stop. Amid tears and curious glances, one family member finally decides to listen to the animal's pleas, assuming he only misses his owner. But as the dog leads everyone to a disturbing discovery, what was meant to be a day of farewells turns into a search for truth and justice that has waited far too long to be revealed. The wind blew gently, rustling the trees surrounding the small cemetery in that forgotten town in the heart of the United States. The low mist, typical for that time of year, spread between the gravestones, creating an almost mystical atmosphere. It was the funeral of William Harper, a man respected by some, unknown to many. At 54, William had been found dead under circumstances that seemed natural, although no one knew for sure how it had happened. The ceremony was modest, much like his life. Close relatives and a few friends gathered around the coffin, watching in silence. Among them was Emma, his younger sister, who quietly cried, clutching a handkerchief between trembling fingers. She seemed like she wanted to approach but kept her distance, consumed by grief. The family's presence was marked by solemn sadness, yet there was also a strange sense that something hadn't been fully resolved. However, one sound began to stand out in the silence: the continuous barking of Buddy, William's faithful dog. Buddy, a German shepherd with attentive eyes and a gentle demeanor, had been William's only companion in recent years. And now, there by the coffin, the dog refused to stop barking, emitting a hoarse and almost desperate sound. The Reverend, an elderly man with a tired gaze, tried to maintain composure, but Buddy was making it difficult. Emma tried to calm the dog, whispering softly, "Shh, Buddy, it's okay now. William is at peace." But the animal didn't seem convinced. He backed away from Emma, pacing around the coffin, sniffing and watching as if searching for something. His bark grew more insistent, louder, and the attendees started exchanging uneasy glances. John, William's older brother, a robust man with hard features, muttered, "That dog is disrupting the ceremony. Someone should take him away." But Emma stopped him. "Buddy was all William had, John. If he wants to stay, let him stay." Some of William's close friends started whispering, exchanging confused glances and speculating among themselves. One of them, Michael, approached Emma and whispered, "You know, Emma, dogs sense things we don't understand. Maybe Buddy's trying to tell us something." Emma gave Michael a curious look, not quite sure what to think. Buddy's barking, now uncontrollable, continued to disturb the ceremony, and Emma started to wonder if there really was something strange going on. Maybe the dog was scared, sensing something, or, like an unwelcome shadow, he was sensing something hidden. Then, suddenly overcome by curiosity mixed with grief, Emma knelt down and looked into Buddy's eyes, trying to find an answer. That's when the Reverend decided to end the ceremony. "Let's pray for William's soul, that he may find peace in eternity." But before he could start, Buddy jumped up, approaching the coffin. His barking was now almost desperate, as if protesting against his owner's very fate. At that moment, Emma's gaze fixed on the dog, and a disturbing question came to her mind. What does Buddy know that they don't? The ceremony had ended, but no one seemed willing to leave. The Reverend, visibly uncomfortable, slowly walked away, murmuring something about disturbances and restless animals. Buddy remained by the coffin, now silent but with a fixed, attentive gaze, as if waiting for a sign. The dog's persistence was starting to unsettle everyone's mind. What had seemed like simple canine loyalty was turning into something more, a kind of silent accusation, a warning cry from one who knows more than the living can understand. Emma, still at the center of the farewell, felt the weight of a persistent memory stirring in her mind. William, her dear brother, had always been a reserved man, with a deep kindness that few could see. He avoided arguments and rarely talked about his past, but in recent years he seemed troubled. Emma remembered finding him more than once sitting on the porch, his gaze lost in the night's darkness, as if haunted by something he couldn't escape. When she asked, he always replied with a sad smile and a simple, "It's okay, Emma." But was it? Buddy, beside her, seemed to be waiting for her command. Deep down, she knew something wasn't okay. Her heart, racing from grief and doubt, began to guide her away from the other's eyes. One by one, the few friends and relatives began to disperse. But Emma remained there, watching Buddy, who was now pacing around the coffin, intensely sniffing the wood, as if looking for some clue everyone else had missed. John approached, his usual serious expression now tinged with concern in his brown eyes. "Emma, he's just a dog. He's confused. He probably just misses his owner. We should let him be. Nothing good will come from searching for answers in an animal," he said, trying to ease his sister's anxiety, but she ignored him, staring intently at Buddy. "Maybe he's not confused, John. Maybe he's trying to tell us something we've ignored." Will was very close to Buddy. Maybe in some way he left something behind. Emma's soft tone hid a determination John knew all too well, and although he was reluctant to pay attention to what he considered nonsense, he decided to accompany her. Buddy, as if understanding what she was saying, gave a low, hoarse bark before starting to walk in the opposite direction from the cemetery, only to stop and look back at Emma. She followed him, her heart beating nervously, while John, now less resistant, went along. William's small house was on a rural road, isolated, surrounded by fields and sparse forest. The sky was cloudy, a uniform grey that threatened rain at any moment. When they arrived on the property, Emma felt a chill when she noticed the front door was ajar. Something felt out of place. Buddy once again began sniffing around, heading straight for the small office William had used in recent years. Emma, standing at the door, observed the room in silence, feeling a suffocating sadness as she looked at the desk still cluttered with papers. The meticulous order William had kept in his life now seemed undone. Books were piled in every corner, documents covered the desk, and a collection of old cassette tapes was arranged on a shelf. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she felt that somehow Buddy was guiding her. John, sensing his sister's unease, sighed, resigned. "Emma, what exactly are you hoping to find here?" She hesitated, as if trying to organize her thoughts. I don't know. I just feel that something's wrong. Ever since Will died, it's like a shadow has hung over me. And now, with Buddy acting like this, it's like there's something he wanted us to see." Before John could respond, Buddy barked again, stopping in front of an old wooden bookshelf. He sniffed around, scratching at the floor insistently until Emma knelt down to examine it. There, under a layer of dust, she found a small wooden box with a rusty latch. Inside the box were papers and some yellowed photos. In one of them, William appeared next to a young, smiling woman, both holding hands, in a setting Emma recognized as a local park. It was an image she had never seen before, but on the back of the photo, she found a note in shaky handwriting. "Forever by your side, Rebecca, 1988. "Rebecca?" Emma murmured, intrigued. She tried to recall any mention of this woman, but nothing came to mind. It was as if a part of William's past was hidden. As she searched further, she found a letter, crumpled and handwritten, which seemed to contain a declaration or confession. She began reading, feeling the weight of her brother's words. "Emma, if you're reading this, it's because my greatest secret couldn't be buried with me. This woman, Rebecca, was the great love of my life, but also the biggest mistake I ever made. I withdrew from everyone, from our family, because something happened, something that haunted me to my last breath. I thought I could bury the truth, but I know the past always demands its price. I hope that one day you can forgive me." Emma let the letter drop, feeling waves of shock and pain rise within her. This explained William's long periods of reclusiveness and the silence surrounding his personal life. But there was something darker in those words, something he seemed to try to hide even after death. John, still incredulous, ran a hand through his hair with an astonished expression. He never mentioned this woman. Could she still be alive? Maybe someone knows what happened between them. The decision was risky, but Emma couldn't ignore the feeling that something very important was still hidden. Perhaps by searching for this woman, they could uncover more about William's secrets and understand Buddy's disturbing reaction. They decided to follow the lead about Rebecca, not knowing whether they would find answers or more questions. The weight of William's words in the letter seemed to echo within Emma as she looked at Buddy, who watched her with intense, almost human eyes. It was as if the dog understood every word, as if he knew that this search was his final mission, to reveal the truth his owner could no longer tell. Emma, her heart heavy, ran her hand over Buddy's head, feeling the warmth that emanated from him like an anchor amidst the storm of emotions engulfing her. The love Buddy had for William, so pure and loyal, was the only thing that seemed to make sense in the middle of this mystery. The next morning, Emma and John set out to look for Rebecca. There were few clues, and the town, with its short memory and hidden prejudices, didn't seem willing to help. Many people remembered William as a quiet man, but when Emma mentioned Rebecca's name, judgmental looks appeared, accompanied by evasive answers. Still, Buddy continued to guide them. With his keen gaze, he seemed to sniff out each tiny piece of information, pulling Emma and John in unexpected directions, as if following the scent of old memories. Finally, an elderly woman, the owner of a forgotten antique shop on a cobbled street, seemed to recognize the name. She gave Emma a tired look, but one full of compassion. "Rebecca. Yes, I remember her. And your brother too. They were inseparable, you know. Young and in love, like few were back then. But something terrible happened." The woman paused, glancing at Buddy, who was sitting beside Emma, ears pricked. "She disappeared, didn't she?" Emma asked, holding back the tears that threatened to escape. The woman nodded. "Yes, overnight. They said William betrayed her in some way. Rebecca vanished without a trace, and he became a changed man after that. It was like he had left a part of himself behind. Few people knew the reason, and William never wanted to tell." The woman's words shocked Emma, filling her with deep sadness. In searching for Rebecca, she wasn't just finding out about her brother's past, but about a man different from the one she knew, someone carrying secrets and sorrows he never let show. And Buddy, beside her, seemed to sense her anguish, rubbing his nose against her hand, as if to say everything would be all right. The faithful dog wasn't just guarding William's body, he was protecting his memory, understanding that this secret couldn't be buried. Buddy's love for William, silent and unwavering, was a guiding light for Emma, a constant presence that gave her strength to continue. And deep down, she knew this wasn't just to satisfy her curiosity, but a quest for the peace that both Buddy and William needed to finally move on. Days went by, and Emma and John made progress in their search. After many questions and suspicious looks, they found a crucial lead. Rebecca might be living in a neighboring town, hiding from a past that apparently haunted her as well. Emma knew she had to go there, And though John hesitated, Buddy's love and devotion kept the flame of determination alive within her. They had to continue, not for themselves, but for that dog who, even without words, conveyed the silent plea of a loyal heart. The drive to the neighboring town was tense. Emma, her hands trembling on the wheel, tried to prepare herself for possible revelations. And beside her, in the passenger seat, Buddy rested quietly, though his eyes never left Emma. He seemed to understand everything, knowing this was the path to freeing William from the invisible chains of the past. When they arrived in the small town, their first stop was an orphanage, a place mentioned by a contact who believed Rebecca might be hiding there. It was an old building with broken windows and peeling paint, bearing the weight of many lives filled with loneliness. Emma and John entered, feeling the cold walls and the smell of dampness mixed with solitude. And beside them, Buddy walked quietly but determinedly, as if every step brought him closer to his master's redemption. An elderly nun with a stern face led them to a small, cluttered room. "You're looking for Rebecca, right? She was here, but... Oh, Rebecca was always a restless soul, a bit fragile, you know. After your brother left her, she was never the same. She's been running from herself for a long time, I think." Emma felt a pang in her chest at those words. Her brother, the one she grew up with, was at the same time someone she seemed not to know. Finally, after a few exchanged words, the nun handed them an old letter left by Rebecca. "She left this for William. She never returned to claim it. Maybe you should read it." Emma opened the letter with trembling hands, and Buddy, by her side, lay down as if he knew those words would reveal a heavy truth. Rebecca's uneven handwriting filled the page, each line a window into her pain. "Will, I thought our love would be eternal. I thought you would love me forever, that our future was sealed by destiny. But you left me, broke my heart, and took away the only bit of hope I had. I don't know if I can go on. I don't know if I can live with this pain. Maybe one day the world will understand what we went through. Maybe one day you will understand me." Emma felt tears streaming down her face, and before she could stop herself, a sob escaped her throat. She realized this letter was the testimony of a true love, but also of the deep guilt and sadness her brother carried. But what had really happened between them? What had driven William and Rebecca apart so cruelly and irreparably? Buddy, seeing Emma's distress, moved closer to her, resting his head on her legs with an affectionate and understanding gaze. The love the dog showed was something Emma had never experienced. He was there not just as an animal, but as a guardian of a story she didn't fully know, an invisible link between past and present. Emma knew she needed to find more answers. And even without knowing exactly where this would lead her, she now understood she wasn't just solving a mystery, but trying to bring peace to her brother's soul, and most of all, to Buddy's faithful heart. With one last caress for the dog, she made the decision to continue, determined to uncover whatever was necessary, for she knew that even after death, the love and loyalty William and Buddy shared needed a conclusion, a truth. Deep down, this was what Buddy was here for. The journey to Rebecca's house was marked by a heavy silence filled with anticipation. Emma drove, and beside her, Buddy remained vigilant, alert to every movement. His eyes seemed to sense they were close to an important discovery, and occasionally he let out a low whine, as if encouraging Emma to keep going. Since William's death, the loyal dog had never given up on that search, carrying his master's mystery and pain, always guided by unshakable loyalty. When they reached Rebecca's isolated house, surrounded by trees and with a desolate appearance, Emma's heart raced. With one last look at Buddy, she gathered her courage and knocked on the door. After a few moments of hesitation, the door slowly opened, revealing a frail woman with graying hair and eyes filled with deep sadness. Rebecca looked haunted when she saw the dog, as if Buddy were a piece of William's past she never thought would return. She knelt down, letting the dog sniff her hand, and then broke into tears, hugging the animal as if clinging to a final memory. Emma, watching the scene, felt unable to say anything, but the urgency to solve the mystery made her take a deep breath and finally begin. "Rebecca," Emma said, her voice trembling. "My brother, William, he never got over the love he felt for you. After his death, Buddy led us here, as if he knew there was still something to discover. I understand now that he wanted me to find you, for you to tell me what really happened." Rebecca hesitated, her eyes full of a painful truth she'd kept for years. Her hands shook, and her voice barely came out. "Emma, William and I, we were inseparable. He meant everything to me. We wanted to stay together, to leave this place. But my parents would never accept it. They had plans for me, plans that didn't include someone like William." She paused, and Buddy, lying next to Emma, kept his intense gaze on Rebecca, as if he knew the crucial point was coming. "When I told my parents about the pregnancy, they were furious. It was a disgrace to them. They swore that if I tried to see William again, he would pay with his life. They said they'd ruin his life, his career, everything he'd dreamed for the future. William found out, and then—" Rebecca closed her eyes, as if the memory was too painful to relive. Emma understood the implication of those words. William hadn't walked away for lack of love, but as an act of sacrifice to protect Rebecca and their future. Buddy, hearing this, began to whimper softly, as if somehow understanding the weight of his master's decision and the pain he carried to the end. "They kept me locked in the house," Rebecca continued, her voice breaking. "They did everything to make sure I'd never see William again. I was isolated for months, with no contact with anyone. And then, when the baby was born, they took him away before I could see him. They said it would be better this way, that he'd have a decent life with another family, and that I'd never see him again." Rebecca's words hit Emma like a ton of bricks. She couldn't believe the cruelty of Rebecca's parents, the coldness with which they separated the two and brutally took her child away. While she absorbed the pain of this revelation, Buddy began to bark, low and rhythmic, raising his paws to Rebecca as if trying to comfort her, as if he understood the depth of her loss. Rebecca, still sobbing, knelt beside the dog and petted his head, finding unexpected solace in that silent, loyal presence. "I've always wanted to find my son," she said, her voice shaking. "I spent years trying to locate him, but I never found a single clue. It's as if he vanished without a trace." Emma felt a mixture of sadness and a newfound determination rise within her. Hearing those words, Buddy began barking more intensely, as if he suddenly understood the true purpose of this journey. Emma watched him, intrigued, and when the dog took her hand in his mouth, she realized Buddy wanted to guide them once again. "You think he knows where your son is?" Rebecca asked, a thread of hope in her voice nearly impossible to believe. Emma nodded, and John, who had remained silent until then, said, "Maybe he does, Emma. Maybe Buddy carries something more than William's memories. Maybe he truly remembers what his master couldn't finish." Thus, with their decision made, Emma and Rebecca followed Buddy, who walked with impressive confidence. The dog seemed to know exactly where to go, as if instinctively drawn to a destination he'd never forgotten. Emma and John followed the dog with their hearts in their throats, while Rebecca walked beside them, her hands trembling, barely containing the anxiety and emotion of finding that part of William she had lost. Buddy led them through the town's streets, passing neighborhoods Emma hardly knew, until they reached a modest house in a humble neighborhood. The dog stopped in front of the gate, and sensing they'd arrived, looked at Emma, almost as if saying this was the end of the journey. Rebecca felt her legs give out, leaning on Emma for balance. The emotion was overwhelming, and the silence around them made each second feel like an eternity. Finally, Emma summoned the courage to ring the doorbell. The door opened, revealing a tall man, about 34 years old, with eyes that, to Emma, looked uncannily like William's. He looked at them with curiosity, puzzled by the unexpected visit, until his gaze fell on Buddy, who immediately went up to him, as if recognizing his master's son. The man, touched by the dog's unexpected gesture, knelt down and petted Buddy, who looked at him with affection, a silent recognition of the lost bond. Emma, tears in her eyes, watched as Rebecca struggled to hold back her own tears. Finally, Emma took the initiative to explain. "Sorry for the surprise, but you're the son of William Harper and Rebecca." The man, visibly shocked, was speechless. His expression shifted from disbelief to shock until he finally murmured, "My name is David. I've always known I was adopted, but I never knew who my biological parents were. This is unbelievable." Rebecca, with tears streaming down her face, approached, her heart racing and a deep love shining in every word. "David, I'm your mother. I never stopped looking for you, dreaming of finding you. They took you from me, but you've always been in my heart. And now, here we are." The two embraced, the reunion charged with an indescribable emotion. Buddy, beside them, watched the scene with the peace of one who had completed his mission. The unconditional love Buddy had for William now extended to David, as if he could sense in this new presence the legacy of his old master. For Emma, the moment was a mixture of pain and relief. Her brother, William, wasn't there to witness the reunion, but somehow, through loyal Buddy, he had guided everyone to this hidden truth. She looked at the dog and, in a gesture of gratitude, petted his head. In the days that followed, Rebecca and David began to rebuild their lost bond, sharing stories, recounting moments stolen from them, but that could now have closure. Emma, by Buddy's side, witnessed the peace settling over everyone, including the dog, who, after so much searching and waiting, finally seemed to be able to rest. And, in the silence of that new family, a piece of William remained alive. While the days passed, Rebecca and David continued to share stories, trying to recover the bonds cruelly broken. The looks, gestures, and smiles carried a nostalgia that defied words, a decades-long pain now revealing itself, but also a newfound hope. Rebecca studied every detail of her son, each feature of his face that reminded her so much of William, the man she had loved and never forgotten. For Emma, witnessing this reunion was like healing a wound, a relief to know that William's sacrifice, his unconditional love, and the suffering he carried in secret finally had a purpose. But she wasn't alone in that feeling. Beside her, Buddy remained vigilant, watching every moment with an almost reverent attention. He seemed to understand that the mission William had left him was finally reaching its conclusion. One night, while everyone was at David's house, the group gathered around a fireplace, the fire casting light on faces marked by pain and recent discovery. Buddy, lying beside Emma, observed the scene with serene eyes, and David, sitting beside Rebecca, looked at her as if seeking more answers, wanting to understand his parents' story and the truth they never had the chance to live together. David broke the silence, speaking to Emma and Rebecca. "You know, it's hard to process all this. I grew up wondering who my parents were and why they abandoned me. For many years I thought it was because something was wrong with me." His voice faltered, and Rebecca, with tear-filled eyes, held his hand firmly. "David," she began, her voice steady but full of emotion, "it was never for lack of love. It was precisely because of love that William left, to protect you and me. He sacrificed our future because he knew that if he insisted, he'd pay the price with his life. They threatened us, kept me isolated. I lost you before I even had the chance to know you." David looked at the fire, absorbing every word, then turned his gaze to Buddy, his father's loyal friend, who looked back silently. "This dog, it's like he knows everything, like he holds the memories my father couldn't share with me." Emma nodded, giving Buddy a look of understanding. In a way, he always knew. Since the day of the funeral, he didn't stop trying to get our attention, insisting that we uncover the truth. He was more than a dog to William. He was his family, his only confidant. Buddy's presence that night seemed more significant than ever. He was there, silent and watchful, as if he knew his journey with William, his loyal companion, was nearing an end. And for the first time, Emma sensed that Buddy could finally rest soon. The next morning, David made a decision that affected everyone. "I want to know more about my father," he said, determined. "I want to know where he lived, see the places he frequented, understand more about the man he was." Rebecca smiled, agreeing, and Emma volunteered to take them to William's old house. The day was sunny, but the air carried a gentle breeze that seemed to bring echoes from the past. When they arrived at the house, it felt heavy with memories long kept. Emma led David to William's small office, the space where he had spent so many nights, surrounded by books and old documents, always with Buddy by his side. David looked around, touching objects as if each one held his father's presence. "He lived here alone, didn't he?" he asked quietly, as if the weight of William's solitude was beginning to reveal something to him. "Yes," Emma replied softly. "He distanced himself from everyone, but not from Buddy. This dog was his only friend and guardian, and he never left him." Buddy approached David as if wanting to reaffirm what Emma had said. David knelt and petted the dog, feeling grateful for having the last living connection to his father. But Buddy, unlike his usual calm demeanor, started tugging at David's leg, as if he had something important to show. Intrigued, David followed him to a corner of the room where a small wooden box was hidden under an old shelf. Emma helped David pull it out, and when they opened it, they found a series of letters and a journal written by William. His handwriting was firm but filled with emotion in every line. David opened the journal and began reading, with Emma and Rebecca by his side. William's words revealed his suffering, his loneliness, and most of all, the intense love he always felt for Rebecca and the son he had never met. Tears rolled down David's face as he read his father's heartfelt confession, the words of a man who had sacrificed everything to protect those he loved. Rebecca, silently crying, squeezed David's shoulder in a gesture of comfort. It was as if, finally, all the pieces of the puzzle were coming together. William's life had been marked by sacrifice, but now, at least, his memory was being restored. Buddy, beside everyone, watched quietly, as if he were waiting for the right moment to express something. When David finished reading the journal, the dog let out a soft bark, fixing his gaze on Emma and David, as if he wanted to convey something beyond words. Emma watched him and felt a chill, as if somehow that bark was the silent farewell Buddy offered in William's name. The loyal dog seemed to understand that his mission was complete, that the secret had finally been revealed, and that his master's wounds, left in life, were finally being healed. In the days that followed, David and Rebecca began visiting William's house regularly, carrying with them the memory of the man who had brought them together. Emma watched this new family, feeling a newfound peace in her heart. Buddy, now calmer and more serene, followed every movement with a patient gaze, without the restlessness that had once dominated him. One afternoon, as the sun was setting, Buddy, lying beside Emma, rested his head in her lap and closed his eyes peacefully. Emma stroked his head, understanding that her dear friend was ready to rest. This dog, who had stayed by his master even in death, could now finally let go, knowing he had fulfilled his purpose. Buddy was gone, but his legacy, like William's, would live on forever. The sunset that evening marked the end of a journey and the beginning of a new phase. The news of Buddy's passing brought a mix of sadness and peace to the house, leaving everyone with a sense of emptiness but also relief. He had fulfilled his mission to the very last moment, ensuring William's legacy was honored and that his story of sacrifice, love, and pain had finally been mended. Emma, holding the lifeless body of her faithful friend, allowed the tears to flow as Rebecca and David watched in silence, feeling the weight of that final goodbye. Rebecca approached Emma and placed a hand on her shoulder. "He guided us here," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Buddy was more than a friend to William. He was the guardian of a love that survived death, time, and even injustice. David, standing beside them, felt something new stirring within him, a deep desire to honor that sacrifice and keep his father's memory alive. And even as he fought to contain his emotions, he knew he had to act. "I want to do more with this story. I want the world to know who William was. No more secrets, no more hidden pain." Emma looked at David, understanding that he wanted justice, and above all, he wanted to redeem his father's memory. In the following days, he pored over William's journal, reading every word like a prayer, trying to absorb every piece of the story and his father's life so that nothing would be forgotten. The house, once heavy with sorrow, was now a place of love and redemption, where William's sacrifice had at last found its way back to those he loved. David decided to share William's story with the community. At first, neighbors were reluctant, as if they preferred to forget the past of intolerance and hostility. But David persisted, and little by little, the truth began to emerge, gaining strength. He shared his father's journal with a local newspaper, which published an article about William and Rebecca's story, a forbidden love marked by a cruel sacrifice. The article spread through the town, sparking strong reactions. People who had known William superficially now found themselves confronted by his humanity, by the weight he had carried to protect Rebecca and the son he never met. Many who had once judged him silently now recognized the injustice that had kept him from the great love of his life. Slowly, the community began to reassess their attitudes, realizing that the cruelty that had separated William from Rebecca and his own son was an irreparable wrong. David felt the impact of William's words echoing through the town, but above all, through Rebecca's heart, who could now walk the streets unafraid, as if the weight of the chains that bound her had finally been broken. This woman, who had been forced to live trapped in her own past, was now free, and her love for William, even after decades of silence and pain, was finally understood and respected. Months later, on a serene, sunny day, David organized a ceremony to honor his father. At the cemetery where William had been buried, friends, family, and even some neighbors and townspeople came to pay their respects. Emma, standing beside Rebecca, felt warmth in her heart, seeing that William was finally receiving the recognition he had always deserved. When it was time for the speech, David stepped up to a small makeshift podium. He took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the sky, and then began. "My father was a man of courage and love, someone who chose sacrifice over revenge, someone who protected his family and the love of his life at all costs. He lost his freedom, was deprived of seeing his son grow, but never stopped loving. And Buddy, his faithful companion, kept that hope alive until the very end. Today we are here to honor his memory and remember that true love is never forgotten, even when it seems buried." David paused, feeling the weight of his words. The wind gently swayed the trees around them, as if nature itself was in tune with this moment of peace and farewell. Looking at Rebecca and Emma, he felt the cycle was finally closing. Rebecca, her eyes filled with tears, held a bouquet of flowers, and at the end of the speech, she approached William's grave, laying the bouquet on it. Her hand touched the cold stone, and in a low voice, as if speaking only to him, she said, "Finally, we're together, my love. I never stopped thinking about you. Now, our son knows your story, and our love will never be silenced again." Emma, beside her, knelt and placed a bundle of wildflowers where Buddy had been buried near William, marking the friendship that had united man and dog in a journey of love and loyalty. When everyone dispersed, Rebecca, David, and Emma stayed behind, in silence, absorbing the moment. The sun was setting slowly, casting golden tones over the field, and a feeling of peace enveloped them all. At that instant, David felt that William was with them, that the love that united them would survive eternity. They returned home with light hearts, certain that William and Buddy had found peace. Did you enjoy this touching story of love and loyalty? Do you have an amazing pet like Buddy? Share their name with us in the comments. We'd love to meet those loyal companions who are part of our lives. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more impactful stories like this. After all, every pet carries a special story, and together we can celebrate them.